Okay, we should be on. I'm just, again, I don't know why. I just don't seem to get my control panel up for YouTube when I first select things. So I'm just sorting that out now. And then we'll be able to get in there. I think the camera's a little bit too close for you to see anything. Let's try the other way. Okay, that's a bit better. And we'll just put the YouTube panel up, which for some reason, on this latest build of OBS, I am having all sorts of grief with it. Things don't stay where they should. And anyway, okay, we've got that. Now let's see if we got the chat. Right. So, welcome back. And let's start off by just having a look at the progress on the plane. When we left it, we were painting it. So this is a different camera that I'm showing you this on now. This is the Sony. The other camera's a Panasonic, and they've got slightly different qualities to how they pick up things. I tried to match them, colour match them, but they are out a bit. This one does sort of show up the contrast a little bit more, I think. So you can clearly see what I was aiming to do with the last spray paint, and it is fairly stark at the moment. By the time we put the panel line weathering and stuff on, that'll blend in quite a bit. Thank you, compressor. So other thing that I was doing, I did a bit of research on the model as well, on the particular variations of the Mark V, and I had a look through my paint stash as well. So originally I was going to be using the Hitaka RAF paint set, which is a lacquer paint set. It's good quality, absolutely nothing wrong with it. I decided not to use it, not because there's anything wrong with it, but because I've just got some other paints that are a bit older that I thought I might want to use them up first, rather than have them sitting on the shelf and just aging. So I went through my stash to see if that was the case, and yes, I do have some other paints. By the way, hopefully the audio is better on this clip than part 8, because again, as I said, I'm having trouble with OBS, and it switched microphones without me realising, and so I was recording to the microphone built into the monitor rather than external microphone. So apologies if you had trouble hearing me in that last one. Okay, so I just have a quick look at the paints I'm going to use, so you just know what I've got. So for touching up the cockpit tonight, I've got some aircraft grey green here. This is Mr. Hobby's Mr. Colour. I'm just using that one because it's closer to hand than the Hitaka one, and I don't have to mix it up as much. I do have to mix it, but it's a bit easier to mix. And for the actual camouflage, well, it's a couple of things. We're going to be using, let me find the right one, this one. This is Ocean Grey. So this is going to be the grey that's going to be on the top surfaces of the Spitfire. It's a life colour paint. For the green that's going to be on the top surfaces for the camouflage as well, I'm using Aquas Mr. Hobby colour dark green, which is a RAF green. For the band around the rear of the aircraft and also the colour of the nose, I'm going to be using life colour sky. And what else are we using tonight? Oh, for the grey, I used a little bit of grey around here, around the cockpit I sprayed, which you didn't see in the last video. So I used, did I use that one? No, I didn't. I used Ammo MIG's rubber and tyres. Very rarely do I paint a pure black because it just doesn't look right when you're doing a scale model, in my opinion. I'm going to be using this one, which is a tyre black as well. This is Mr. Hobby's version, which is slightly darker grey for the gun sight that we're going to fit to the model. So the first thing tonight I want to do is do some work on this cockpit. I want to fit the gun sight, do a little bit of touch-up work, see if there's any damage in the cockpit we have to fix, and then go ahead about masking and then fitting the canopy frame. So we'll start by taking out this sponge that I was using to stop overspray, and just see how we went. not too bad at all. If you can see that on camera, but we didn't get any overspray inside there. Got a little bit of touch up to do on the top there, you can see, mainly where it's got the primer and things on it. So that's what I'm just going to touch up now. I'm not going to get too fussed about this because we're going to have this as a closed canopy aircraft, so I don't have to be as fussy about weathering it and all that sort of stuff, getting exact colour matches. So we'll just put a bit of green back on where it should have been, and it's been covered with the primer. The Mr. Colour lacquer paints do actually brush paint quite well, has to be said. Okay. I'm not going to paint around there with the green because that actually shows up in the canopy frame, which is not a bad thing, but it's not what I want. Actually painting out black is better. So I'm just going to have to wash my brush. And then we can look at what we're going to do with putting in the gun sight, because that's going to be easier to put on now. Airfix do give us a gun sight on the clear panel, on the clear tree here. And that's, perfectly serviceable for something in this scale. Good enough though, I can't see it with my eyes, so I have to put something a bit stronger on. Okay. And which one do we need? Because this one has optional parts. F12. Makes sense. Okay, so that should be the round one. Yep. These are the finest cutters I've got, so that's why I'm using these ones, particularly on clear parts. Then I don't have to worry about sanding, which was always a problem with something this small. Now for affixing it to the spot, I could use some glue, but there's a risk that it will craze the clear parts, which I don't really want it to do. So I'm probably being overly cautious here, to be quite frank, but just in case. It gives me a chance to show you the glue we're going to be using for fixing the canopy down anyway. So I'll need a cut for that. And actually, while I think of it, I'm just going to put a little bit of touch up on that canopy frame. Give it a couple of minutes to dry while we're doing these other things. So bear with me. Okay, just let that dry a bit. Right, now the glue. There's a heap of different glues out there, white glues typically, that you can use for canopy frames, and they're all good. There's nothing dramatically wrong with them, but I found some will weaken over time and break off. So I've been trying different glues, and the one I'm going to show you, just as soon as I find it, there it is. is this one from VMS called Transpar, and it's quite a good glue for canopies and things. Well, it's got pros and cons. Let's talk about the pros. The pro is it sticks really, really well. So once you put this stuff on, it's very unlikely that the parts are going to fall off. The downside is it's like stringy glue. If you remember the old tube glues that we all typically use when we got into the hobby, you know what I'm talking about. That sort of where you put the glue down and then you pull the nozzle away and the glue would follow you and you end up with a spider mess. It's a bit like that. So what they recommend to thin it is they have a product out called Universal Carrier, and this product is actually really good and can be used in a lot of the weathering techniques with pigments. It can be a substitute for using some mineral spirits and, well, yeah, mineral spirits we call it in Australia. I'm not sure what they call it in the US now. But basically it can be used, and one of its advantages to using it over the other stuff is it's a lot less smelly. So if you're working in confined spaces or in the house, you may want to check out the VMS stuff for doing your oil paints and things, because it will make you more popular at home. So what I'm going to do here is just grab a whole lot of it. You can see it's very thick. I think it's got thicker actually since I bought it. I think it's starting to go off, to be honest. But I can still use it, so why not? And what I'll do now is just get a dropper, sorry. And I'm just going to mix that around a bit. And that'll get the glue a bit thinner and a bit more workable for what we're trying to do. Now I've got glue all over that stick, so I'm not sure whether I'm going to use that one. I think I might retire that one and get another toothpick. So now we've thinned it, and that seems to be working okay. Let's put a lid on things, because if I can knock that over, I will. And we'll just apply a bit of glue to this, and then to where it's going to go. This stuff dries clear, by the way, so if you do get a little bit of it where you don't want it, you might get away with it anyway. Okay, let's turn this around. And I think I haven't cut it enough. Don't you go anywhere. Let's try that again. Done a really bad job of cutting that. I feel like I have. Need to be sanded. It looks like it should fit. I don't think it's going to. I have to sand that down. Won't worry about that part that's supposed to hold in the right spot, and we'll just sand it off and glue it. The other research I've been doing is trying to work out what colour the wheel well should be, and the answer seems to be it depends. So I've seen references to it being a natural metal, in a light grey and in the grey-green. I don't think the grey-green makes sense to me as a colour they would use for that, because I would imagine they would be saving that paint to use in the cockpit areas. So I'm thinking the grey is probably more what they used, or even the wing colour, if it was overspray or something. But I'm not sure whether these were brush painted or airbrushed. I know they used a rubber mask, and I know some of the camouflages were put on at the field level, and they were basically brush painted. They weren't going to go fancy with them. Well, that part is really not cooperating. And I'm not sure why. I'm thinking Super is going to come out shortly. I don't have a win here. Ah, got it. Okay. Now that has have a bit of black put on it, but I'm going to let it dry for a couple of minutes before we do that. So let's have a look at the other part of the canopy. Actually, we're going to have to put that back, which is the clear part, which I think I've just managed to successfully knock off the table. Along with a part for an airbrush. I did, I knocked it off the table. Okay, and again, if you're wondering if you're the only person that knocks things off the table, now you know you're not. I do it all the time. So this is quite a nice moulding by Airfix, so I don't see any reason to have to try and put some more clear over it or something to make it look nicer. It looks perfectly fine to me. So I'm just going to do a test fit here. If you recall earlier in the build, I actually had to cut down the back here. I had to cut that down to make this fit according to the instructions. So I did that while the aircraft the fuselage was in two halves. I pulled that all apart and did that. And that looks like it's going to sit fine. Famous last words. The other part, of course, we need to test is the front windscreen. So I haven't cut that yet out of the clear part, so I guess we should do that now. Again, we're going to have to be careful to pick the right one because there are two on here. I think it was 8 from memory. I'm just going to check the instructions. Only problem with kit manufacturers when they put lots of variations and things. Yeah, F8. So what I'm going to do here to cut this out is I'm going to do it in 2 parts. And the reason why is I want to try and avoid fracturing or getting like a spider web sort of splinter on the canopy clear pieces. So what I tend to do to avoid that is I'll actually cut it off back here. And you can see I've still got the parts attached to it. And I'm just using some more powerful nippers there. These are Citadel ones the wargaming guys use, and they've got a really big blade on them, so I can cut through heavier plastic with these. They've actually turned out to be very useful. And now I've done that, I can use my fine ones to come in, and there's no stress on this now because this can bend around or do whatever it needs to do. And we get a nice clean cut on these parts. Like so. And then we throw those clear parts away because they end up on the carpet, and then I think I've got canopy parts. Alright. It's a little bit of a rough edge there. Probably won't be perfect. If I was doing this properly, I'd try and blend it in a bit. But I'm hoping that Airfix have done a good job of making this fit. Everything else has been pretty good, so. Okay, that's my hope. Let's see how we go. Yeah, it wasn't bad. I really want to have to sand parts. Really don't want to have to sand parts at this point. What if I do that? There we go. Yep, no, that's going to be fine. Just going to put the front windscreen in first, which is easy enough to do. Okay, so before we start on that, let's put some paint on that. There it is. I'm just going to get a brush. And I'll just paint the base of this gun sight. Not too fussed about this because, again, you will see it, but you're not going to see that much. Certainly closing up the canopy makes your job a lot easier as far as detailing goes. Okay, it's coming up on the camera. There's the gun sight done. So I'm going to leave that to dry. Leave the plane safely out of the way. Because the next step is going to be looking at the masking for these guys. Now when I was doing the 24 build, I didn't have a masking set for this, and I was going to have to mask it up myself. Since then, B&A Hobby have come out with what looks to be a masking set that wasn't labelled specifically for this particular kit, but I think it should work. At least I'm hoping it does. So I'm going to go and grab the part. So this is a Edard mask set, usually pretty good. And yeah, it's nothing you couldn't do without it, but it just speeds things up a bit. It's a luxury, it's nice to have. Don't know what other parts it gives us. I guess if we look at the instructions might help. Oh yeah, cool. So we get the, there you go, there's F8, that's what we were just talking about. So F5 must be the part we got at the back. So it gives us those, and it also gives us some masks for the hubs on the wheels, which is nice. So that will make life a lot easier. It's not a two-way one, so in other words, I'm not going to try and paint the canopy frame on the inside, you know, and then put the outside colour on and all that sort of nonsense. I'll do another trick to show the interior colour. I don't really need to. I think I modelled this this scale, and then of course we've got to see the cart switches. There we go, that way. So now it should tell me what parts I need. Which are not. Where's that coming from? Okay. What am I looking for? I can find it. There it is. Just trying to find a blade. Okay. Full disclosure, I'm not very good at this. This is the one part I don't enjoy doing about models, model aircraft. I'm happier to even paint them metallic finishes than to do this. Which I know makes me a bit odd, because I know as a younger modeler I used to run away from metal finishes, and I know a lot of modelers that do run away from them. But I've got, that's going to have to do. I've got more confident with that. But I've still got a bit of learning to do about these things. So what do we want next? We want this guy. Oh, I had it in the right spot. It's not perfect. The first to tell you that, but I think it'll do. Except for this middle one. I'm not happy with the middle one. I'm going to have to take it off. It's just not quite lined up properly. It's more obvious now I've done the side ones. I'm going to have to try and get under it. It's not playing ball. Probably shouldn't have burnished it down, shouldn't I? I was being a bit silly. Oh, come on, I just peeled you off. Okay. Let's try again. It's a bit more successful. I can live with that. Just using the toothpick to burr down the edges, so we get a nice sharp demarcation, which is a bit more of a challenge with acrylic paints because they take a bit longer to dry, so they can leak under the mask. What else we got? F5, so we're going to be using something. What are we using? The big one. This is a bubble, so I know this is going to be interesting. Oh, okay, so you just do around the edges and then you put one in the middle. No? Or you just have to fill it in yourself. Okay, fair call. Alright, so we'll start with the one at the back. Which I'm struggling to see a bit. There it is. A very tricky part. Now, this goes around the canopy frame. And I'm not sure why. Why do I want this around the canopy frame? Oh, the inside of the canopy frame. Okay. Okay. Interesting. What's the other one? The other side. So the Spitfire was used in Australian Air Force, but not in Europe. It was used out in the Pacific. It wasn't really the favoured aircraft, to be honest. It really didn't sort of work well in the tropics. Wasn't its favourite place to be. So the Australian Air Force sort of preferred the P-40s, the Kitty Hawks, for the Pacific flying, where they could handle the fairly rough sort of treatment they got, and the climate, and the fairly rudimentary servicing that the Australian Air Force could give them. Whereas the Spitfire, its main culprits was it was a bit more of a thoroughbred, really. It's very typical, that sort of time frame where the Americans sort of built the big cars, and whereas the British built little sports cars. So the Spitfire was unquestionably a good plane, but it had a very short range because it ultimately was just meant to go off from airfields and intercept and then come back down, which it did very well. But with the Australian requirements, looking more for an aircraft that could fly a longer range, go over water for extended periods, carry a bomb load, do strafing. So actually a lot more low-level stuff. And the P-40, even though it wasn't a great high-altitude fighter, was quite good at low altitude, and it was built like the proverbial brick. So it took a lot of punishment. And given the sort of fighting that the Australians were doing, that was kind of the priority. But the Spitfires were brought out as a defence fighter for Darwin to try and intercept the Japanese bombers. By the time they got here, though, a lot of that had actually stopped. So the crews were pretty bored. But I think they used them in a few other spots. But of course, they were repainted partially by the Australians, and they put shark mouths on them. They were the later Mark Spitfires, I think the Mark 9s or something. I probably got that wrong, but they were certainly a later model and than this. And they look quite stunning with the shark mouth on them. They went through a few variations of the shark mouth. The early ones they did weren't that good, but they sort of, I don't know, they sort of improved the design until they finally figured out what worked with the Spitfire's shape, nose, and what they ended up with was a really nice colour scheme, particularly with the white, blue and white roundels, and they put white rather than yellow on the front of the wings, and they just were a very smart looking plane. There's one of them that's been preserved. It's up in Queensland. You can find a video of it if you want. There were some Australian pilots also early in the war that were fighting for the RAF, so there were Australians in the Battle of Britain. Not a lot, but basically all the Commonwealth countries were represented there. The main engagement the Australians had in UK was flying the Lancaster bombers. So if you've heard about the famous Dam Busters, that was basically an Australian squadron was involved in that. And what else were they involved in? Oh, we had P-51 Mustangs in Italy doing ground support, and also I think they did do a little bit of air support, fighter cover for the US Army Air Force guys as well. And we flew the Kitty Hawks. Where did we first see those? Oh, we first saw those in the Middle East, and Africa, sorry. That's where we first saw those, and really probably in World War II the P-40 was the aircraft if you're talking about Australian engagement. And then the Boomerang, we've got to put that in there somewhere. Alright, so that's covered that. The last bit we got is these big pieces, which is, I've forgotten to do. I suppose we should do that now. So yeah, didn't use a lot of Spitfires, but we did fly the Hurricanes a bit. We did fly those in the desert quite a bit. We had the Hurricanes before we got the Kitty Hawks, and they were quite successful. And if I'm honest, I've kind of got a soft spot for the Hurricane. I think it doesn't get the love that it deserves, because the Spitfire is a beautiful aircraft, and I can see why it captured the imagination of the public, but a lot of the grunt work and a lot of the success in the Battle of Britain was Hurricanes. And I just don't think they quite get the love they deserve. And I might be strange, because I think I'm the only person in the world that feels this way, but I actually like the look of the Hurricane. That's not fitting. Why is that? Is that supposed to go over the other way, maybe? Maybe I've got that the wrong way. Let's have a look. I think it's quite a good looking aircraft. But that's probably, everyone goes on about the Spitty, which is again, it's a really pretty plane, but I just think the Hurricane looks more like the business. Must be an Australian thing. We like planes that look more functional. That's how it's supposed to go. Close enough. And then we're going to have to put some tape or something around that bubble. I might put a bit of this liquid mask on it. But before I do that, I think I'd rather just focus on getting this on the aircraft so we can move on. Right. So I think it's going to be easiest to start with the windscreen or windshield, whatever it's called, and drop it in the cockpit. Why not? Just do a test fit here again. Make sure we're on the right track, which means I have to get it facing the right way. There we go. Yeah, so I think that's the part we want to get fitted first. And when we've got that and we're reasonably happy with that, we'll do the rest. This has started to thicken up a bit again because of the thinners. We might just put one drop of thinners on that. I don't need a lot, I don't think. Should be enough. See if that's enough. Yeah, I think the glue might have dried a bit too much. So we might have to do another one. Oh, I've already used that one. You see, once I get a bit of thinners on it, it's much easier to work with. So it is worth the time to do that. Okay. Trying to avoid getting on my fingers because it is quite sticky, and drop it into the cockpit instead. It does give you a little bit of working time if you're wondering why it's moving around. didn't get any seatbelts in this kit because I was trying to do it in 48 hours, but normally I would have put seatbelts in. It's such a prominent part of aircraft, and so I find it a little bit annoying that kit manufacturers don't include some representation of a seatbelt, whether it's a moulded seat belt into the seat itself, or it's I'm not a big fan of the decals, but at least a decal, something to represent it. But Airfix, and they're not alone in doing this, don't do it. And I just get a little bit annoyed with it. Okay, that's not too bad. All right. Obviously that's going to have to dry. But what we'll do next, since we're talking about things that dry, so we'll put some of this on. This stuff's good, by the way. This is the Abtul Tung Lung or something, 502. It's actually quite, well, I won't say it's cheap, but it is compared to some other brands, considering how much you get. And it works really nicely. Now I've got an old brush around here somewhere for projects like this, but of course I can't find it right now. I've got an old tatty brush here. Yeah, that one's pretty tatty. That'll do. I'll just put this over. It just dries like rubber, so it'll peel off when we're ready to remove it. The blue's nice too because it's easy to see where you're applying it. Some of the other ones, I think the Vallejo ones are pale blue, which can be a bit harder to see in some projects. This one's quite easy to see. Probably overdid it there, a little bit too much. So hopefully it doesn't go too far. I might take some off. Don't use a good brush for this, there's the other advice. It wrecks brushes even when you clean them. So just use an older brush you don't particularly care about. Air bubbles don't worry me, they'll work their way out. There we go. Alright, now, camouflage. I've been looking to see whether these aircraft had hard camouflage edges or soft, and the answer I got was it depends. They did use like a rubber mat that they would put over the upper surfaces of the plane and use that as a mask. So as a result, there were two common camouflage patterns, and if you look at all Spitfires, they all basically have one of those variations typically, unless they've had some work done on the field. And that was a hard finish, like a hard edge finish. So I think that's probably the correct answer. However, when I go trying to find pictures of Spitfires, certainly ones that have been restored, they have definitely used airbrushes because they've got a slightly soft edge to them. So I'm going to compromise on it and do a trick that will give me a slightly soft edge, but not too much. So it'll still look more hard edge than soft edge. The other thing I've got to look at is around the wings. So demarcation line was halfway around the wing there, and it was a hard edge. So that's easy enough to do. Tail, underneath, the whole tail was painted on the underside, and then the rest of the plane was painted. And they used very handily, they used the panel lines on the edges of the aircraft for the demarcation. So you don't have to guess with these aircraft, like some where they've sort of more modern aircraft where they blend the colours a bit and they may not be on the actual panel lines. That wasn't a problem with this one, which is good. So the masking here should be pretty straightforward. For most of my masking, I use Tamiya. It just works. I I do have other brands. I've got the Mr. Hobby here as well. And that works as well. But I basically just use the Japanese tape, which just works. I just don't get problems with it. So, and I'm going to mask up pretty much everything, because if I don't, I have a fantastic ability to get overspray in places it shouldn't be. I've even put overspray on models and wondered how I've even got it there. So having done that enough times, I don't try and worry about saving 3 milliliter of paint by, you know, not covering things up and all that sort of stuff. So you will see me tape up everything. This thing's going to look very much that way when I'm done. So I think we'll start with the nose because that's an easy one. So on the Spitfire, there is a engine cowling and a lower cowling there. That's where the demarcation is. Couldn't be any easier than that. This paint's dried for over 24 hours, so there's no problem with it peeling. So I don't have to worry about the tape being stuck down good. It'll be fine. Just going to get it right, or close enough to right. This one. Okay, so that's the front done. Now for the back, we may have to do this in multiple passes to get the tape to sit where we want it to sit. But there is a line going along here from the wing root all the way back to the rudder, and that's basically where they have the demarcation. Okay, that side. And we're going to have a bit of overlap here, so I'm just going to be, I'm going to have to cut the tape to avoid that being a problem, because it didn't go all the way to the end. So that's okay though. We can fix that. And to fix it, if I can find it. Not there, I must have it on the bench somewhere. There it is. I'm going to use this knife, which is an X-Acto knife with a, what was it, like a platinum or something. It's got an extra sharp blade in it, and I reserve that one for cutting masks and things rather than using it on plastic. And if we have a look at what I'm trying to do here, I'll show you on the paint guide here. You can see that it basically, there's a demarcation line that I've just done, and right here where the rudder is where it stops. So think it actually stops just before the end of before the rudder, but we'll start with this anyway. So that's that. And we've also got some overlap here that we don't want on this side. This side's okay, I think. No, that's got overlap as well. So we're going to have to do a little bit of surgery here to fix the overlap. So what I'll do is just peel up that end. And if you're feeling very confident, you could just cut along the line there as well. That would work. But here's the line there. Okay, so it won't be a problem with the overlap. I just found the correct line. Yep, okay. So what I'll have to do is just burnish that down so I can see it. Do the same on this side. I think, well, this won't completely fix the overlap, but I'll fix most of it. Okay, I've got a little bit there, and I think it's going to be easier just to use the knife. Right, use the right knife. And just trim that. That's enough. And the same problem on this side. Enough. Okay, so now we're up to, I'm going to do the front, I guess. It's a bit of a pain with those guns. So how we go. Too bad. So I'm just trying to get the halfway mark on the near the gun port, and then as I get further on, I'm not worrying too much about it because it starts to thin. The wing starts to thin out so much, it's not really an issue. If I can get it to sit where I want it to sit, I think I might glue that. I'll put that side down first. I'll try again. There we go. give us a nice soft edge. About there. Okay. The other thing I like to do, just because otherwise I tend to grab things and I shouldn't, is I'll just trim the edges of the tape that's running out the top, like so. Okay. Inside the wing, which is a bit more of a challenge. And a bit more visible. There we go. This side has not been sanded completely right, and it drives me insane every time I look at it. But again, because I was rushing the kit, I didn't get that joint as good as I should have, and I'm just going to deal with it. I don't think it's going to affect the model when you see the final model anyway, but I'll know it's there. Okay, so that's the front wing done. Now we're going to do just down here at the back of the wing, which can be a bit tricky. So I wonder if I've got a smaller tape. Or an intermediate size, I should say. Sure, I have somewhere. Do you think I can find it? No, I haven't got one. Okay, so I'll just have to use this. It's reasonably flexible, so it should be okay. Yep. This is the problem with using tape that's too thick. You have to cut it. That'd be better. So you see there, I've joined it up and then I've just let it hang loose a bit down there. I'll do the same with this one. Airfix actually have got a demarcation there where the wing joins into the fuselage, so you can actually use that as your guide, which does make life a bit easier. Alright, what else are we going to worry about? Tail plane. So we'll put some smaller stuff on that. Not terribly exciting to watch, sorry guys. It's got to get done. One of those things. Compare notes, see if I do it like you do or do it something different. This side's a bit harder because it's got the counterbalance for the rudder on it, which is getting in my way. Let's go that way and then that way. Yep, that'll do. Okay. Why does that look wrong? Not sure. Maybe it is. No, it's not. It just looks wrong. Okay. So we're nearly there. Bit of tape I had left over. Down that gap there. Now for these bits, just to save a bit on tape, because that yellow tape is pretty expensive, I just use this kind of modeller's tape. I don't know why, that thing just is. There we go. All right. I don't know what it is about this latest version of OBS, but it's not as good. I can have more trouble with it than I ever had with the old one. Anyway. Now we're just going to start patching stuff up. Now again, this is underneath, so there should be no spray on this. But like I said, I've been caught out so many times that I just don't risk it anymore for the sake of a bit of tape. Doesn't have to be perfect, it's just got to be good enough. So when we see it from the top there, there's no risk at all that I'm going to get any overspray. That's the goal. Because the underwing of this plane's got a few bumps, which makes it a little bit more challenging. Should be good enough. There we go. And last but not least, so it looks a complete mess. Hopefully it won't come out a complete mess. But as I said, this is just me being ultra conservative because of the amount of grief I've had with overspray over the years. And if I've done weathering in particular or lightening the panels and stuff, trying to match that later is a pain. As I'm about to find out with this kit, because I forgot to paint the undercarriage, didn't I? So the undercarriage landing legs are going to have to get painted separately. So I'm going to have to match it up anyway. But fortunately they're only relatively small, so even if it's a bit of a difference you won't notice. But if you're trying to match up stuff, I think last plane I had a problem with was a German 109 or something like that. And trying to match up the mottling and goodness knows what else. From where I just hadn't been careful enough masking various parts of the plane as I was doing it. So I'm just giving you a quick once over. So we've got a demarcation there on both sides, which is clean. We've got demarcation down the tail, which is clean. Underneath of our elevators is covered. That's all good. This part here is fine. This part here is going to have to be checked before I put paint down. But it looks pretty good. Might be a minor bit of overspray there, but I can live with that. And while we're doing that, of course, the canopy's been drying, and as has the liquid mask. So we're about ready to put some paint on this thing. Change glasses. So the colour we're going to be using, to find the right one, is Ocean Grey. Now this is Life Colour Paints. There was a modeller, I won't mention his name, but he's a chap I watch on YouTube, had a very English response to this Life Colour paint. He said it was rubbish, and I've heard that before from a few people. If you are using this paint and you've never used it before, the advice I would give, and I'd give this for any acrylic paint really, do not just assume that they mix and thin like Tamiya's. If you treat this paint like a Tamiya acrylic paint, yes, you will think it's rubbish because it's a much more pure acrylic paint. The Tamiya ones are more of an alcohol sort of paint. I'm not a chemist, but what I'm trying to say is there's differences in how they behave. This behaves a lot more like a pure acrylic. Another one that behaved a lot more like a pure acrylic that would upset some people is the original Ammo MIG paints. They are a bit more like this as well. In fact, the same thinners and spraying techniques work for both. But if you don't know that and you try and treat it like your Tamiya paints, if you're very familiar with those, yeah, you could get quite frustrated with it, I'd imagine. So we'll try to avoid that. I have got some Life Colour thinners, which has already been decanted in a smaller bottle, and a little bit of Liquid Tex retarder has been added as well to that thinner, so that reduces the risk of airbrush dry tip, which is always a challenge. Now, one of the things that throws you off about Life Colour paints and these sort of more pure acrylics is that the thickness of the paint does in fact vary from colour to colour, quite a bit sometimes. So if you are not experienced with the paint and you feel like, I'm just going to go 50-50 or something like that, you could come unstuck because you might be adding 50 to a paint that was already pretty thin and find yourself over thinning it. This particular paint I'm mixing up now is actually quite thick for a Life Colour paint. Now the other thing Life Colour paints can do, which is annoying, I'll be the first to admit, and I can show you, because there's a bit on it, is it dries around the edge of the bottle. So you get like little bits like that. And of course, if that gets in your airbrush, it'll clog your airbrush and you won't get a good spray pattern. And I think that's another problem that some people have had. And this particular brand seems by far the worst brand. There we go, look at that. Seems to be the worst brand for this. So there are a few things you can do to fix it. You can get a stocking, put that over your cup, or if you're using a little mixing cup like this, put that over that and actually pour it through the stocking so that you actually basically are filtering the paint and getting rid of any of that. Or if you're lazy like me, you're just going to have to eyeball it and make sure you check your paint. Oh, like that. See, we've got a whole heap of it. So we won't be using that cup. So yeah, that is a paint. And it seems to happen when the paint's been opened and it's staged a bit, basically. These paints, I don't know how old they are. They're at least 5 to 6 years old because that's how long I've had them. But I suspect they're quite a bit older than that. These were new old stock in a local hobby shop in Hobart that was getting rid of them. And they had like these little, like, I don't know what you call them, like little goodie bags, so you could get these paints for about $1 each, which I think originally they were $5 each, so it was quite a bargain. So I worked in Hobart at the time, so I'd wander down at lunchtime, and if I had a few dollars in my pocket, I would just grab a bag, and the chap across in the counter was very nice. He said, look, if you want to, you can just go through and pick out the colours you haven't already got. And I went, no, that's fine. I'll just grab whatever is there. And so I did. So I ended up with an awful lot of certain colours, whether I wanted them or not. But that's fine. And I like these for brush painting. I like these for doing figures. And I've got used to them for this sort of work. And I don't mind them actually. Famous last words, it probably won't work for me tonight. Just add a little bit of Vallejo flow improver here. Not too much because we've already got the flow aid in there. It's just me being paranoid. Got a fair bit of paint to do, so I'm just thinning it, checking it out. I'm also looking to see if I've got any junk in it that's going to foul up the airbrush, but I think we're okay. It's a very mild paint is how I'd put it. It doesn't like you being heavy-handed with it, so when we go to spray it, you'll see me spray it on fairly lightly and give it a moment to dry. As I said, different technique to what I'd use with some other brands. But if you're patient with it, it looks really nice. You know, the actual finish on the model's fine. Alright, we'll see if that's enough paint. I'm not sure if it is, but we'll see how we go. Okay. So let me just set up the camera and the lights for you. Rubbish. Okay, I'll switch you across now to spray booth. There we go. This spray booth is one of these water curtain ones. I absolutely love this thing. It is so much better than a normal spray booth. So much better. Highly recommended. Does a much better job of capturing all the smells and things. And it's just a really nice spray booth. It wasn't that expensive. I think they can be. But if you get it in the right time, right place. Okay. The airbrush I'm going to use is the same one I did for underneath, which is the Creos PS289. About a 3.5 millimeter needle. Very nice airbrush. Just putting some air on the model. Make sure we get rid of any dust or whatever it's got on it. Okay, just put the fan on, so it's going to get a bit noisier. And the water curtain. Now this paint, you don't want to spray it on a super high pressure, so I'm going to put some paint in my cup, and what we'll do, I'll put it on camera actually so you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to just try and dial in the air pressure a bit. So that's about 18 psi. That's not too bad. I'm going to go a little bit lower. That's about where I want to be. So I'm about, I don't know, 15 or so psi. We'll see how that works. Put our model back. Now if I'm going to get any problems with spraying, it's going to be in the wing root. That's typically where, if you're going to get any orange peel, that's where it happens. And that's where I'm going to start. Okay, so just stop at that point so I can show you what's going on. You can see the colours going on. Hopefully you can see that. And it looks good. Now I'm not going to keep putting more paint on because this paint is very thin, so I need to let it dry for a little bit. So I'll just zoom you in a bit. You can see what I'm doing. I'm going to move the plane maybe. So what you'll see me do is then start to move the airbrush. Whoops, and there's a hair. Awesome. Managed to score there. Oh no, it's a bit of that canopy glue. Bugger. Sand that off. There we go. Alright, back to what we're doing. So, yeah, you'll see me go down. Oh, for goodness sake, there's more of it. How did I manage to do that? Not a lot to do. Yeah, so you'll see me just move down the aircraft sort of wing, and if I don't get a good coverage, that's fine. I'll go back and put more on later. I might actually put just a slightly more air pressure on, I think. Let's go and do the other wing while that's a chance to flash off. Going in a bit closer to the wing roof, because that's where you typically get the orange peel if you have it too far away. And then backing off a bit for the wing. Again, not trying to get complete coverage on the first pass. so. Now if we hold that up. Now because I've got retarder in it, it does take a little bit longer to dry, but you can still see it is flashing off. You can look at the wings there, you can see that there's a little bit of wet, but it's getting there. So while we're waiting for that, let's have a go at doing the front of the nose. Now some modelers who are cleverer than me, they can paint just the bits where the camouflage needs to be in the grey. I'm not that clever, so I don't even try. I'll put this all over the top surfaces, and then that way, oops, that way I know I've got everything. A little bit of dry tip there. I haven't done the green over the canopy frame, which I probably should have done, but I think with this model at this scale we can get away with that, so I'm not too fussed. Okay, so that's the front done. I'm getting a bit low on paint here, so I'm just going to top up my airbrush. I think I will have enough paint to do the top anyway, which is good. Alright, let's have a look at the wings. Not too bad. Now I'm going the opposite direction, so I was going up and down before. And now I'm spraying them horizontally, I guess. And that's just so if there's any spots I've missed, it'll be harder to see. So, I think those wings are pretty much done, as far as getting coverage at least. No weathering at the moment, but that's all, you know, fading or what have you. But on this particular session, I just think getting the main colour down, I'll come back and put the fading in a little bit. Okay. Going down the side of the fuselage here. Trying to keep the airbrush horizontal, you know, lined where I'm spraying, so I'm not going at angles like this to spray. So I'm off camera like that. I'm trying to do it like that, a bit more directly facing the surface if I can. That also helps with coverage, but also reduces orange peel because the paint's going onto the surface of the model the same distance, whereas if I'm doing it like this angle, I've got some that's really close and some that's further away. That sort of does tend to make the orange peel worse. It's coming along quite well, that colour. It's a bit more green, but I think that might also be because of the lights that I'm using. I don't mind it anyway, it'll be fine with the green on it. Yeah, that's nice. Okay, so let's put a few drops of paint left if I need them. Let's just do a bit of a look first. Make sure I've covered everything. That wing root is covered. Maybe not. Oh, it's dried already. On the safe side. Yeah, so as you can see, if we look at the wings here while the rest of the fuselage is drying, you can see the wings pretty much dry now. The outside edges anyway are here. And, you know, looking at the paint, it works well. doesn't obscure any of the detail. Dries very smooth, which is one of the things that I've noticed with light colour paints. They do dry really nicely if you put them on the right sort of ratio. Their colours are a little bit different to some of the other manufacturers. It's a pretty common thing with their light colour paints, but it's slightly different shades. Not horrible, not like they're completely wrong or something. But I just think their interpretation is a little bit different to some of the other brands out there. But they're all slightly different, so let's be honest. And I don't know how much of a difference it makes if you're going to weather a plane like I'm going to do here anyway. Because it's going to look different anyway by the time I finish. But I'm pretty happy with that. So, just put that in frame so you can see it. So there you go. Oops. That's not good. I'm hopefully paint over that. That's very thick. We're going to run now. Ha! Made it perfect. And I just ruined it in the last second. Oh well, there's actually a little run there, but it may sort itself out if I just ignore it and pretend it's not there. It might self-level. So you can see anyway, the light colour paints aren't that horrible to work with. You just got to take a little bit of time to thin them and don't overdo them. I've put them on there about as thick as you can. Typically if I'm doing a tank kit or something, armour kit, I'll put them on thinner than that. Not necessarily thinning the paint, I should say, but the application I'll dust on more coats is what I'm trying to say. But that's not too bad. And that should dry up and look quite reasonable, and by the time we put a bit of weathering in it and lighten up some of the panels and then put the masking on for the green, it should look fine. So that's, I think, a good spot to stop. So we've done the top now. Next video, when I catch you guys, I will come along and we'll look at doing the masking for the camouflage. I've got some ideas how to do that to get a slightly soft edge to it. And then we'll also do a little bit of priming, so you'll get a chance to see this stuff, the VMS primer, because I've got to do the undercarriage and the landing gear, all that kind of stuff. I've got to prime all those parts, so I thought I'll do the next one on camera so you can see that VMS surface primer in action, which I think is a really nice product, so hopefully you'll get to see that. Thanks guys for joining me, and I hope you enjoyed the video if you're watching this later, and I'll catch you on the next part. Cheers.